Hello, we are the Gays and you are welcome to the News Digest. Today in the episode, Russia is again in flames. Multiple explosions overnight target power plants, military industry, and oil depots. Before Lviv was hit, satellites could provide Russia with data for the strikes. Putin threatens the USA again, now because Ukraine could receive Tomahawk. Russian regions have spent the past 2 nights in a now familiar rhythm: explosions, fires, and power outages. Local sources reported loud blasts and smoke rising over infrastructure facilities, after which parts of several cities were left without electricity. A combined heat and power plant in Russia's Bryansk region was hit. Russian telegram channels reported a missile strike that partially disrupted the operation of local energy infrastructure. Eyewitnesses said a large fire broke out at the site of impact. And Belgorod's thermal power plant, Luch, Ray, lived up to its name only briefly. 3 flashes and darkness followed. According to preliminary reports, a strike hit the power substation of the gas turbine. As a result, parts of the city and surrounding areas were left without electricity, and water supply disruptions were also reported.
It's not a good evening, unfortunately, for Belgorod and the Belgorod district. At the moment, we still don't know how many other settlements in the Belgorod region are affected. Another nighttime shelling. There is damage to the power infrastructure. All emergency crews have now been dispatched to the site. I'm heading to the impact site myself. We'll assess the scale of what happened now. In 40 minutes, there will be a meeting, an emergency government meeting.
Let me remind you what Ukraine's response is to Russia's strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. And, as you may have seen, that response is now already in action.
Росія повинна чітко знати, що
Russia must clearly know that civilized countries differ from the wild by the fact that they never start first and are not aggressors. But that does not mean they are weak, and one should not show weakness. If they threaten a blackout, for example, of the capital of Ukraine, then in the Kremlin they should know that there will be a blackout in the capital of Russia.
In the Russian city of Dzerzhinsk, a fire broke out following airstrikes. Local sources reported that the Sverdlov plant, part of Russia's military-industrial complex, was damaged. The facility is one of the country's largest producers of industrial explosives. At least 30% of its output goes to defense production, another 30% to explosive materials, 35% to industrial chemicals, and about 5% to machinery manufacturing. And during the night of October 6th, Ukrainian drones attacked Russian-occupied Crimea. It was particularly loud in Feodosia, where a major oil depot, the Feodosia Oil Transshipment Terminal, was hit, damaging fuel storage tanks. The terminal has been targeted multiple times before, as it supplies fuel to Russian military units stationed in Crimea and along the southern front. Explosions rocked Lviv overnight on October 5th, as Russia launched a massive assault using Shahed drones, Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, and cruise missiles. According to reports from Suspilne correspondents, this was one of the most extensive combined attacks on the Lviv region since the start of the full-scale invasion. Investigators have documented damage to residential buildings, industrial sites, schools, religious buildings, warehouses, garages, and vehicles. Explosive technicians continue to inspect the impact sites, while rescue and emergency services remain on the ground. The Lviv Regional Prosecutor's Office reported that a family of 4 was killed in the village of Lepivka.
A residential house was destroyed by a direct hit. A family of 4, including a 15-year-old girl, died at the scene. 1 more family member and 2 nearby residents with varying injuries were hospitalized. 3 others received medical assistance on site, from the report of the Lviv Regional Prosecutor's Office on Telegram.
A public broadcaster, Suspilne correspondent, reported damage to several civilian sites in Lviv, including the industrial park Sparrow, built as part of the economic resilience program of the country, already during the full-scale war. The territory was all in flames, with no military production in place, as reported by the Lviv city mayor. The extent of the damage was commented by the Parliamentary Committee of Ukraine.
Last night, a Russian missile destroyed the Sparrow industrial park in Lviv. This park, which grew from a vacant lot and became an example of how industrial park reform works, demonstrated that Ukrainian industry can revive and grow even during wartime. There was never any military production there. It was an open and transparent space for business, creating jobs and strengthening the Ukrainian economy. From a Facebook post by the Ukrainian Parliament's Committee on Economic Development.
During this large-scale Russian missile and drone assault on October 5th, which primarily targeted western Ukraine, at least 3 Chinese reconnaissance satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar, SAR, passed over the region, according to Militerny, which analyzed data from the satellite tracking platform Heavens Above. Satellites from the Yaogan 33 series made a total of 9 passes over the Lviv region between midnight and approximately 11:30 a.m. Later that morning, around 6 a.m., another Chinese satellite, Yaogan 34, equipped with optical reconnaissance technology, also entered the region's orbit, making 7 passes throughout the day. And very soon after this, Beijing responded to the Ukrainian intelligence statement about China providing satellite data to Russia. "We are not aware of the situation you mentioned," said the response, to a request to comment on the statement by a representative of the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service that there is evidence that China provided Russia with satellite surveillance data to launch strikes on targets deep inside Ukraine. And while Chinese satellites fly over Ukraine, Russia threatens the USA directly, not even caring to veil it up in any way somehow, as there is no need, really. Masks are off.
Мы должны их сталкивать дальше.
I'm not talking about supporters. I think we should push them deeper into conflict. We should exploit their internal contradictions to push them into a shutdown, not just economically, but politically too. And we shouldn't be shy about that. They often accuse us of interfering in their elections. We say we do not interfere. We really do not interfere, but we should interfere. We should. We are developing our propaganda activities in the positive sense of the word. I'm talking about there, in Europe and America. We need to make it even stronger. Because the red lines we've drawn, those red lines, they've long since been crossed, and we haven't really answered any of those crossings in a striking way. Maybe that just shows we are decent, well-mannered people. Crush them all there, once and for all.
In Russia's public sphere, calls for aggressive actions against the United States are becoming increasingly common. Under the influence of years of state propaganda, a significant part of the population shows support for such rhetoric. At the same time, there are Russians who do not share these views, but their voices remain largely unheard due to low political engagement and the absence of real mechanisms to influence government policy. In this environment, Vladimir Putin has effectively consolidated power in his hands, relying both on public support and on the passivity of a society that has yet to come to terms with the legacy of its Soviet past. The question is, will Putin receive such a mandate just as well from Trump and his administration that until now somehow managed to avoid any stark reaction on daily deaths in Ukraine, turning them into a routine backdrop of international politics these days? However, this time it's an open threat to the US, and ignoring it is signing off Russian dictator, another carte launch into hybrid, for now, provocations against the USA and in a very short-term future. Inevitably, direct military conflict. Yes, Putin's red lines were nonsensical. That is why they have been crossed many times. That much is true. Now the time has come to find out. Does the USA as a dominant world power possess its own red lines? And aren't these Russian threats a clear trespassing of such? Under the pressure of political reality, all these questions merge into one. Really, is the United States of America still a dominant world power? I guess we'll find that out soon enough, as UATV is closely following the course of events, because we know you are following us. And for the report for today, it is only a matter of time before the United States strikes back at Putin, according to the President of Finland. Once Donald Trump realizes that carrots are not working in negotiations with Moscow, he will resort to sticks, Alexander Stubb said. Possible responses from the United States to Russia range from tougher sanctions and tariffs to providing Ukraine with American long-range weapons, writes Politico. Andrei Dmitrenko will continue in the report.
If the United States transfers long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine, it will destroy Moscow-Washington relations, stated the Russian dictator at a Valdai Discussion Club meeting. On October 1st, the Wall Street Journal reported that the U.S. approved the transfer of intelligence to Ukraine for long-range missile strikes on Russian energy infrastructure far from the border. According to the outlet, this step is driven by the White House considering the possibility of supplying Kyiv with long-range weapons. Putin also reminded Donald Trump of how the U.S. president called him and Russia a paper tiger.
And I said to him, you don't look good. You're 4 years fighting a war that should have taken a week. Are you a paper tiger?
The Russian dictator took offense and, in his usual manner, responded,
Well, a paper tiger, what might follow from that? Go ahead then and deal with this paper tiger. Putin's speech at this Valdai forum was largely aimed at Trump, and not only at Trump, but at his audience. He's clearly playing to this audience and sending a signal to Trump that he's ready to negotiate, that he has a positive attitude toward Trump. He didn't criticize Trump, even when expressing dissatisfaction or issuing warnings about the Tomahawks. He didn't engage in direct polemics with Trump.
Indeed, apart from a flash of resentment over the U.S. president exposing his lies about the fabricated successes of the Russian army on the front, Putin showered the White House leader with compliments. He claimed that if Donald Trump had been in power, Russia's war against Ukraine would not have started. He blamed European leaders for the full-scale aggression unleashed by Moscow. However, this tactic is unlikely to work anymore, believes the president of Finland. Trump is no longer inclined to persuade Putin. He will act with different methods. Having realized the carrot didn't work, he will switch to the stick. The question is only what kind of stick it will be, Alexander Stubb told journalists.
You don't have to read The Art of the Deal to understand the way in which President Trump negotiates. It's unconventional, but it is quite results-oriented. Alexander Stubb, president of Finland, in an interview with Politico.
President Volodymyr Zelensky urged partners to increase pressure on Russia due to the aggressor's hybrid attacks on European countries and Russian terror against Ukrainian civilians.
Unfortunately, there is no worthy, strong global reaction to everything that's happening, to the constant escalation in scale and audacity of the strikes. That's exactly why Putin does this. He simply laughs at the West, at its silence and lack of strong responses. Russia has rejected all proposals to stop the war, or at least stop the strikes. Russia is openly trying to destroy our civilian infrastructure, and right now, before winter, our gas infrastructure, power generation, and electricity transmission. Zero real reaction from the world. We will fight so that the world doesn't stay silent, and so that Russia feels the consequences.
Analysts believe that providing Ukraine with a reparations loan using frozen Russian assets would be a painful blow to the aggressor country. The president of Finland considers this idea brilliant and is convinced it will work. The Kremlin understands this too. Putin threatens to nationalize foreign assets if the EU uses frozen Russian central bank reserves to aid Ukraine, reports Bloomberg. On September 30th, the Russian dictator signed a decree on certain features of the disposal of property in federal ownership. The document explicitly states that the measures are in response to, I quote, unfriendly actions by the United States and other foreign states. Reported by Andriy Dimitrenko, UATV News.
That was it for today. Thank you for standing with Ukraine. Please subscribe so to stay tuned to what is happening in the world, shown to you by the gaze from Ukrainian perspective. Goodbye.